Check us out.
You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to die.
Oh my gosh. Hey, welcome. Maybe not to them. So welcome. My name is John Skippy Limcool. This is a special before Halloween treat video. I have made a Halloween treat for all of the Plugin Guru Unify customers. That is this 600 megabyte plus library, 56 patches that I am giving to you now. And you have about 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks right now, to make patches and send them to me. I will put everybody from around the world that makes patches, we'll put all the patches together. And on Halloween, I will release the complete final library, all the patches from everybody from beginning programmers all the way up to seasoned pros that make patches that send them to me. We'll put it together as this free library for anybody that owns Unify. So I'm going to go through and show you UniSCREAM.
You're going to die. Die.
There's some really cool atmospheric bells, hits, drum kits, pipe organ kind of sounds, big pads, all sorts of textures, a number of other. I opened this up and invited other Plugin Guru Nation customers. I call Guru Nation to all of you that make patches. You're part of the Guru Nation. So it's a free subscription. You don't have to fill out anything. You're just automatically in. So I got patches from a number of people. The ESC sent some stuff. Celestial Dreamer sent a whole bunch of really cool samples. So I'm going to show this to you. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some tips on programming from basic. I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do if I want to make something? Experiment, right? All the way up to more seasoned approaches to what you can do. To install it, all you do is you go to pluginguru.com. For the free library, you just click here. It's free. So you just say, get the library. Download now. You'll go through register. You need to own Unify and be updated to Unify 1.1.10. That includes MIDI box, jitter box, all the cool MIDI effects we have included. I don't have a lot of other details yet. I'm going to add more details to this page as we go, but I wanted to do this video first. So you go there to download the library. It's a zip file. Unzip it. For those of you on the PC, if it unzips, weird. We've had some people having a situation where that happens. Download 7-zip. Look on the web for 7zip.org, and that does great with unzipping Mac zip files. And what you end up with is this simple README file that has just details, the email link for if you have questions. And all you do is you take this and drag it over the interface of Unify and let go and say, okay. And just like that, it will just install it. There's no license required. Samples are protected. They're not WAV files, so they won't work if you're trying to use these samples in something else. It's only for Unify. Patches are not protected, which means if you modify them and save them, they will be updated, which is not the case with like factory patches because we have those in a protected format. This is just a free library to give to people that own Unify, okay? Once you've downloaded it and you've installed it, and the lightning bolt does its little library refresh, you'll see in the library list Plugin Guru UniSCREAM. So select this, and now you have all these patches to play with. And we have atmospheric bells to kalimbas. We actually recorded this from this like 2 or 3 weeks ago. There it is. I put reverb on this sample so it rings out and it does a cool thing because it's just one sample across the whole keyboard. Because you can do fun things with filtering and stuff when there's more than just a bunk and it goes away. There's my assistant, Taylor Harris. Made a cool modular drum kit. Kendall Cochran, he has done a number of the conversions of Unify libraries and Massive and some other libraries into the Unify format that we now include when you buy a library for Omnisphere. A lot of them say Unify and come with Unify patches. Well, he works like 7 days a week in a mine somewhere in America, 12-hour shifts, and then he's off for 7 days. And during those 7 days off, he loves to play with Unify and save out patches and explore and do stuff. He's created a whole bunch of samples from when he's on shift in the mines and then processed them. You hear the sign shaking and this cool blast. It's called like blast in your face, I think. I have a groove. So if you unmute MIDI box and play a note, it plays a groove, and I'll show you how to make your own grooves here at the end. So there's that drum kit. Super, super cool. Alien Shot. A plugin guru customer named Chris made this. This is his voice going through a reactor plugin that turned it into a bass. And I've already got some patches from Chris, and they're crazy good. We have the ESC gave us some hits. Scary Box. That's this. These are the samples before I processed them. Some of these sounds, these are available down here in the synth, this Comet Flight, for example. That's one of the bows of the rods with processing. Just becomes super cool. But up here in the hits, this is just the Scary Box samples before processing. Okay. There's a big pipe organ. There's my pan flutes and a whole lot of other things going into making this. Okay. The ESC provides some cool leads. If you go to the 8 real-time knobs, there's distortion. So you can make really cool sounds just by playing with the real-time knobs. All of the patches use these same knobs, which means you have attack, decay. So you can program just using these 8 knobs if you want. This is one of those bows of the rods that I processed and treated and turned into a lead sound that's really cool. You can hear this bow when it's going across the rod. You hear kind of sounds like crackly. That's rosin on a bow, on a rod, metal rod. Able, unstable. The full name is Able, but I'm kind of unstable. So. And from E flat down, the samples have an added bonus octave. Because in Unify, I can have lots of samples. So these have like 11 samples across the keyboard. So I have octaves down in the left hand, so you can be more the ominous. You don't always want octaves in both the left hand and the right hand. You want this to be more pure. But down low, it's big and ominous. Now, old tape version of Able, but I'm kind of unstable is like Able, but I'm really unstable. So here's one where I didn't add the octaves in the left hand so you can hear the difference. And here I was with the octaves in the samples. Hear the difference? So when it's kind of like photography. You get to set the scene and decide what's going to be in your photo. Same with samples. You can have each sample across the keyboard, if you can play more than one sample across the keyboard, have as many different characteristics and changes in the samples as you want. So I wanted octaves down here, but not up here. Right? Okay. Celestial Dreamer, he's working on a really cool dark ambient cinematic library, and so this is just a small sampling of this library he's going to be releasing. We'll let you know when it comes out because it's super cool. This is a cool sample because up high, listen to this, you'll hear some of the elements have reverb. But it keeps evolving and doing really cool things. Isn't that cool? So, these are cool sounds, man. For a free library, you gotta realize this is pretty cool. Now, I'll show you some tricks. That's a special one to talk about later when we get into programming. Here's your screams.
Die.
Scary flutes. And let me show you something with these. If you double click Guru Sampler, this is a lot of samples across the keyboard, right? If you go to all samples, this gives you the list of all of the samples. We don't have names on them and stuff like that, but you can call up one, and when you call up one, it automatically switches to playing that one sample across the whole keyboard. So I got the whole keyboard range. So you can do cool stuff like that. Oh wait, let's go back. So, to use these to make patches, you'd want to go in and find one of these. Maybe you want that, and then like you'll add Able Unstable as a separate layer, and you know? So you need to think about things like that. These things that have lots of samples across the keyboard. Even if you go to Sonny's flutes, he did the really cool, beautiful phrases that are in Cloud City, as well as the flute that's playable in Cloud City. We did a session for this. It was really cool. He's in Arizona. I'm in Portland, Oregon. We used a really cool plugin, and that allows him to transmit and me to receive his signal in 24-bit 48K audio format. So I recorded these as if it was a recording session, him coming over here and sitting up and setting up a microphone, but instead he's still in Arizona. Love technology for stuff like this. And again, open Guru Sampler, and here's a list with all of these samples of Sonny playing. Select one. And you can play the samples one at a time. See how they work across the keyboard, right? So I have some crazy abstract out-of-the-box things to talk about in programming once we get there using those types of samples. Let's keep going. Special effects. Steam pipe. I showed you earlier the Comet. Like, these sound really pretty, but put distortion. Lots of reverb. cool stuff. Some of these get a little bit, right? So fun stuff to play with. The acid scratches, there's this space on the Leaf Audio box, sandpaper. And you can just scratch it, and so put reverb on it, scratch, play across the whole keyboard. Pretty cool. Right? Atmospherics. Death grinds. This is a Flappy Batty, so it sounds like a bat. I think he's just clapping his hands. Play across the keyboard. It's a cool effect. So all these sounds are included in this library. Okay. There's even a somber Vox, this really nice pad. If you go back to the knobs, and let's make a slow attack, a little bit more release, it's a great pad. Now, so that's the library. You're free to download it. You're free to play with it and use it for any productions you want. You don't need to make patches. It's not required in any way. But if you want to make patches, let me give you some pointers on making patches and how to work with Unify, how to save them in Unify, stuff like that. Okay. So to start with, let's take something like Somber Vox. Now, one thing to point out, you're welcome to use these samples plus all of the samples and all of the patches that you find in the Unify Standard Library. There's 505 patches in the Unify Standard Library. So you have access to those, as well as, and this is really important, you can use the plugins that come with Unify. So if you want, you can use, if you click the instruments, you can use OBXD, DX, Digits, the MDA DX and the JX plugins. You can use those. If you use a sound font player to load your own sound fonts, then you need to make sure you save those into your folder. We'll talk about that in a minute, okay? Effects-wise, all the Unify standard effects, all the delays, distortion, dynamics, all of these you're welcome to use. For MIDI effects, you can use MIDI box, jitter box. Combo box doesn't exist yet for you guys. It's coming. It's pretty amazing. But Jitterbox, Polybox, and MIDI box are able to be used, and I'll talk about those here shortly. But you can use all of the tools that make up Unify, but don't use effects, plugins, and instruments that are not part of Unify. If you use Spire, if you use Omnisphere, if you use Valhalla or Sound Toys or some other company's audio effects, or numerology or some other MIDI effect, that's going to make it so that the patch can't work for everybody else unless they own that plugin. So we don't want to use any plugins that people have to actually buy to use beyond Unify. So just use the plugins that come with Unify, okay? If I get something and it's using Valhalla Reverb, I'm going to swap it out with something that's one of our reverbs because we have 10 different reverbs inside of Unify. So only use the plugins and the samples that come with Unify and this library, okay? And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's call up Somber Vox. This is from the UniSCREAM. And I'm going to go to the knobs. And I change the sound. I want to add a little more reverb. Right? Maybe I want to go over here and add more EQ. So I could go EQ, flex EQ. Hit that airy spot. Now, if you're just a beginner and this whole programming thing is new and you don't want to really dive into the knobs and the parameters with Unify, there's a way of programming where you're just adding layers. And it's really, really fun and pretty simple. You just scroll down here. Let's say maybe piano. Maybe we want to add like the intimate piano to this, to the acoustic intimate. Right click and say load into new Unify layer. And that way it's just a Unify layer that contains everything needed to make that sound. And then I want to turn the pad down. And I want more atmosphere. So I'm going to look inside of this and go, oh, there is a water verb. And the auxiliary send to the water verb isn't very high. So let's open water verb and make it ring out longer by bringing up what's called the feedback. And maybe I want to explore a little more and maybe find like a pad or something to put with this. So scroll down till you find pads and find something like maybe mellow jaws. Right click and say load into new Unify layer. So we now have 3 layers. And if I want, I could transpose this up plus 12. Okay, so if you want, and that's your sound and you like how it works, pretty cool. So we go save. You want to save it to Plugin Guru UniSCREAM. That you want to make sure you set that so it will save it with this in the file. It tags it that way. And I'm going to say key, lovely sound, before you're, actually we'll go like that, killed. And put your name as your programmer. So I'm John Limcool. And this is changed from a vocal to a keyboard. Let's call it keyboard. We could airy pad, acoustic, piano, intimate. Intimate, yeah. And then just hit save as. Don't hit save because it will overwrite the existing patch where this started from, which was the vocal pad, right? You don't hit save because that's the update. You go save as because you weren't making it a new file. This will pop up and just say save. And now when you go to the UniSCREAM library to keys, you'll see that there's 2 patches. There's the alpha omega pipe organ, and then the lovely sound before you're killed. All that kind of stuff, right? So you can do building of layers is a fun way to make. This is just entry-level programming. Adding layers is programming. You're combining different patches to make something new. And that's totally cool. Now, if you go a little more in depth, let's say that we go to the pad and we open up the Unify layer and we open up Guru Sampler and we play with a filter. I want it to slowly grow. Yeah. So now when we play, because of adding a resonant filter opening, and it's not quite strong enough. I want to hear it a little bit more. So go bring up your resonance a little higher. And maybe I want to go to the envelope and more envelope. It's a little bit too much. Let's make this a little bit slower. maybe a higher dB filter so it's more pronounced. Okay. Now, I have modified this patch, and I like what I've done. You can either go to Save and hit Save, which will update it. Or if you want, there's a quick way of just holding down Option and clicking Save, and that will also update it, the same as if you went to the Save page and hit Save. It's just a shortcut, because I like shortcuts to get around things. So that is basic. With a little bit of a twist, we went into the filter and made it so it's... Right? Another type of programming is to take something like, say, SteamPipe, or this other pad. There's a pad here that was really noisy. We could use Filter Max. To filter out the low end. And then say we want to add a new empty layer, but instead of just an empty layer, I'm going to have it start with, let's say we want to go to OBXD and some sort of cool big like synth detuned. And then I'm going to go here and right? So I'm making a patch, I'm editing away. Let's say I want to have some LFO change in that sync. So pitch to oscillator 2s. There we go. Cool. Let's have pitchy G also on the sync. Maybe we wanted to do that filter too. Cool. And then we could go over here, let's add a delay, because these types of motion sounds are really cool. And then we could add another layer, go to the standard library, find something fun to play with, something that gets us into the neighborhoods. We could say Grand Tetons, add that as a Unify layer. So we have a dark pad. We have this airy layer. And then this cool motion synth stuff. So then you just find the right mix. Do stuff that way, so we could save this, save pad. I know someone's there. I gotta be like, I know someone is there. And we can say exclamation point, because when we save this with save as, and we go to the finder for the final saving, I can get rid of the exclamation point, but it saves it with the exclamation point inside of Unify, because the name inside of Unify can be different than the name on your hard drive. That's why we did this, is so that we wanted to add exclamation and other characters to the names. Some of those you can't save into the name when it goes to your computer hard drive. So they're separated so that the name in the computer can be different. So Maybe on top of this, I want to add some scratching. So we'd go down here to the textures to like scraper fast and load that into Unify as a separate layer. And maybe we want to like process it some. So we double click to open the Unify plugin, open Guru Sampler. Let's take it up in pitch. So let's high pass filter it. And then we'll have it so that the filter can slowly come down. Bring down our gain. There. That's kind of cool and scary. And I don't want this to play across the whole keyboard, so I'm going to use my key range to say use stop. In fact, I'm going to right click on the top box and I can just play a key on the keyboard to say where I want it to stop. So up here I have the pad. And just to be silly, because you can do stuff like this pretty easily, go to Drum Kit, the Mine Kit, right click and say add that into Unify. And also let's right click and say stop on B. So down here, there's some drum hits for layering. And if you wanted, like I showed you earlier, let's solo. And instead of being all the drum kits, let's go into the Guru sampler and let's just go through the samples. Find one that sounds cool. That's hella cool. And now we have that across the whole keyboard instead of the drum kit. So that, let's put big reverb on this. Let's go Unify standard reverb. The Dragonfly Hall. There's a couple presets here that are nice and right. So that's even better. I've updated this. I've already saved it before, so I know I can hold down Option and click Save to update the pad to have these added elements. So you can think of programming with Unify as a whole different experience than with a synthesizer before this, because each of these layers you could consider a separate synthesizer, right? But together they all come together to make this patch, but it's 5 layers. It's a 5 oscillator synthesizer. I want to point out something really quick. If you reveal in Finder, the way that the library is organized is that there is a media folder, a MIDI files folder, a patches folder, and a samples folder, okay? Media is where you save graphics, the images, pads. I know someone is in there, right? There's websites you can go to that have license-free photos. This is one of those websites. This is called Pixabay. And you can just see there's all sorts of cool photos. But I need something kind of dark and haunting. So I would say, like, just for fun, let's type in Halloween. See what shows up. So let's say I want to use this one here. So we go free download, download. I have this photo right here. Now it won't work in its current size. So I'm going to open it in Photoshop. It needs to be square. It needs to be 96 pixels. So it's very tiny. And so we'll go over here. Let's say square format. So we go over here to ratio 1:1. And we want to have it more over here because it's not scary over there. Okay. And let's say we want to make it a little bit more pronounced. So we'll go here. And so now we can go image size 96 by 96. Export. You can export as PNG, save it as a PNG or JPEG, and then I'm going to say scary, desktop save. And then all I need to do at this point is put it into this folder. And then the final step is to find the patch. And it's a pad. I know someone is in there. Click copy the name, but not the .unify, but the name. Go to Scary and paste that name and then the .jpeg or the .png. And now when I call up this patch, instead of being the UniSCREAM, it's going to be the hand, the scary image. So you can use your own images. Make sure you have the rights, or you're using something like Pixabay where they're license free to use the images. Okay? And you can put your own images into the library, into the patches. So just do that, put that into the medias folder, and then I'll copy those over into the final library, okay? MIDI files, it's a little bit different. For MIDI files, you'll need to make a folder with your name. So say Command-Shift-N and Bill Walton, whatever your name is. Make a folder, or your artist name, or you could even be Gus the dog. Tell me the name of the folder so I know that that's the name of your folder and stuff like that. But now that's where you will save your MIDI files, because the MIDI files need to be in this folder. If they're on your hard drive and you send me your patches and I don't have the MIDI files, then the patches won't play with the MIDI files. So it's up to you to do this part to make sure it works. So, and then all I have to do, let's say I use Logic and I want to make my own drum groove with the Mind Kit. So it's a Mind Kit. And I'm going to go over here to Logic and I'm going to say I want to be like maybe like 105 beats per minute. Okay, so I sequenced a little something. Let's quantize it. I want to add some more to it, so I'm going to add a maybe I'll try these samples here. I'm on a different track. I'll combine them in a minute. And let's quantize these guys down, turn on the loop so we can actually cycle. Now, for this kit, I actually want to go into the sampler. I'm going to tune it down. Okay. So I can Command J to join them. I'm going to go in here and say, this is 105. Mind groove, right? And so I'm going to copy this name. I'm going to export this MIDI file, and I'm going to export it into Unify, into libraries, into UniSCREAM, into the MIDI files. I'm going to put this into John Limcool, not Gus the dog. I used to have a dog named Gus, by the way. And then go up here to the actual MIDI file name, paste the name, save. So at that point, you can delete the sequence that you did in your DAW. And now you can go to Unify, turn on MIDI box by hitting the little B so it's black instead of gray. And I want to go to John Limcool and Driven Mind. There it is. So I made this groove. If I want to add my own bass line to this too, let's say I want to use MIDI box to play a bass line. So we'd go over here, we'd say Unify standard library. Let's load in the bass like number 6 to a new Unify layer. I'm going to mute the drums for a minute. And I'm going to go over here. Actually, I could do this. Check this out. This is a cool trick. So I'm going to undo deleting the MIDI file so that it's back. And I'm going to turn off MIDI box so this can play. But I want to mute the drums and get this to play. Right? Now this is on MIDI channel 1. So I'm going to say listen to MIDI channel 1. And then I'm going to go over here and hold a button down that lets me make MIDI channel 2. And I'm going to put this bass so that it listens to MIDI channel 2. So now I could do my MIDI file while... And then you need to decide at this point, is your bass line going to have melody or just a rhythm that you'll then play different notes to make what the melody is by playing? Because there's two ways to do it. You could either go... like it's a song. Now you play one note and it does that melody. Problem is when you play different notes to transpose, those notes are going to get transposed to play weird major, minor, different things chordal wise. Whereas I'm going to do it this way, where I'm going to just play, I'm going to play this C. So I have this, it's like an arpeggiator, but I get to decide the feel and the durations. And I missed one note, so I'm going to go over here to hit P for the piano roll. And I'm going to say, take that like beat one note and put that begin to beat 3. And then I want to put something in there, so I'm going to take these guys, option, click over here. There. Right? So now I've got what I want, so I can say paste, but instead of groove, I'm going to say bass. And at the beginning, instead of the tempo, I'm going to say bass. And so command copy, export, and paste. So I've pasted a bass and a drum groove into my John Limcool folder in the Unify's libraries folder, right? So now I can get rid of these, go back to MIDI channel 1, and let's call up Unify and get this to work. So go Unify, set everything back to all for MIDI channels since we're done doing the sequencing part. And then for here, you need to click and add a MIDI box. Go to UniSCREAM, to the John Limcool folder, and here's the bass. So now it doesn't transpose across the keyboard right now. Anywhere I play, it's the same. So go to MIDI box, and where it says transpose, click transpose. Transpose it up an octave. Now I can play the melody and go over here and unmute so it's active, so the groove is playing. And the drums, I'm going to go to MIDI box here and make sure that note to course is off for the drums. Otherwise, if this is on, then they transpose up and down the keyboard. I don't want that. I want it, you can actually play. Maybe I like that pitch. Now turn off note to course and it stays. Or the other way to do that is to go to Groove Sampler and it's just a course parameter. Then go to the Unify standard library. Then we want to add more to the groove, so we can go here to the drums, BPM drums. Let's add a kick. No pitch shift. Right? And then I want to stop this so it only plays up to B. And then I could go to UniSCREAM and I could find some cool texture thing like maybe Moonscraper. Add that as a new Unify layer. And I want to limit the range to C and up. So that way this maybe I want to add a Comet synth to this. So we say add this into Unify. And that also needs to be from C up. So just like that, I've made a cool split. 2 sounds in the right hand, a bass with a MIDI file, a kick drum from the Unify standard library, and then a MIDI file that I did on the Mind drum kit. Then I changed the drum kit so it was short and snappy. And that moon scraper, I think, would sound really cool with a really slow flanger. So go modulation, flange mod. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so there's so many places to go with making patches, making grooves. Save, because it's a split and stuff, this becomes a BPM split. Frightened of my own shadow. What the heck? Call it BPM split. Make sure you put your programmer name, write comments, all that kind of stuff. Save as, because you're saving something new, and then save. And then if I wanted to find something scary, I could go back to my Pixabay. Cool. All sorts of photos to play with. I think from these choices, I'd probably maybe choose this. And so we say download. Thank you. Let's go here to the scary picture, put it into Photoshop. And maybe I just go like the lower half of the photo. Maybe even like less than that and smaller. Who knows? Yeah, let's keep going with this. It's kind of cool. Image size 96 by 96. I don't know how this will show up, but we'll go export as a, let's say JPEG this time, because you can do JPEG or PNG. Desktop, save. And again, you'd go to the patches. Let's see. Bye-bye Gus the dog. We don't need that. Go to the patches, to the BPM split. Frightened of my own shadow. Copy that name. Go to the media. Put this into here. Paste. And now let's call it up and see what it looks like. Because at 96 pixels, things don't always look quite right, but that's kind of cool. Cool. Expect the shadows start moving or something like that, right? So I hope this gives you some pointers on how to make patches. And you can also just start from scratch, play with the samples, go over here, change to the Guru sampler, go to the UniSCREAM library, and here's all the sounds you have to work with. And I have them organized by the different people that contributed the sounds, so you can find what you want. Remember that if you go to something that's more than one sample across the keyboard, if you go to these things like scary flutes, you can go to all samples and just pick out one. Play across the keyboard. Use a MIDI file to play that as a cycling thing that you sequence up. So I'll show you. This is like getting into more kind of esoteric stuff, but you could make a MIDI file where there's no click because you don't care about that. You're just right? This is going to be a MIDI file. And so you could go down here, make sure it starts so that everything starts on 1. Everything seems to start on 1. Yeah. Oh, I think it's quantizing it. So we want this first note. Make sure that you hit the editor. Make sure your first note starts right at 1. Okay. And then just let's call this scary flute phrase. Copy, export as a MIDI file, and it's saving it into my John Limcool folder now. So just say scary flute phrase. So now I have this thing that I could try. I'd go back to Unify right here. And you would go to the MIDI box and turn it onto this layer. UniSCREAM, John Limcool, scary flute phrase. And turn on transpose. Put reverb on this. Right? So you have this cool. And then go finding a cool pad. Go to all libraries, go to pads. Find something like Orbitralis, which is also kind of weird. So you can start to use MIDI box to play phrases, all sorts of things beyond rhythms. It can do spooky textures. Right? You can do things that are very different than what you can do with anything else. There's tons to play with in that direction. So it's there to play with. See what you come up with. So October 24th is the deadline. Make sure that you organize your patches so that you send me, just basically at the end, you'll send me your Plugin Guru UniSCREAM folder, all right, with your stuff working the way you need it to work. And inside, in the media, you can have your photos. In the MIDI files folder, there'll be your folder that I'll just put into the master folder of MIDI files. And then your patches go into the patches, and then they'll just work, okay? And only use the plugins and the samples that are part of Unify or Unify's standard, the factory library. Don't use Cloud City, because not everybody has Cloud City. Don't use Big Bad Beat loops. Don't use Airwave, melodic techno, serum things. But get to us by October 24th. We'll put everybody's patches together and have a fun, crazy library with whatever you guys come up with. So it's always fun to see what you guys come up with. I hope you enjoy this little adventure. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you soon. Bye. I want to scare you all. That's fun.